Sam was working hard to prove himself. He was kind to the other engines, and he pulled freight trains without complaining. He'd been taught a lesson for being silly, and wanted to make sure he did everything right. One afternoon, he was told to take a line of empty cars from a siding. As he backed down towards them, they began giggling and teasing him. "Look, it's Sam. He must be feeling better. Be careful not to sprain your axle again." Sam ignored them. He coupled on and began to move. But the freight cars were up to no good. They put on the brakes, and Sam's wheels skidded as he tried to grip the rails. Then, they all released their brakes, and he shot forward. Panicking, he put on his own brakes, and the cars bumped into the back of him, derailing his tender. "Shivering side rods!" he exclaimed. The cars laughed and began to sing at him. "Sam thinks he's the greatest, he says he never fails. He thinks he's big and strong and smart till he's bumped off the rails. He tries to prove that he's the best, that he's really handy, but when he pushes us around, pop goes Sammy." Sam went red in the face. "No one will trust me now," he thought sadly. Hubert brought workmen to help Sam. "It wasn't your fault," he told him. "It was those silly cars and their tricks." Sam didn't answer. Then Hubert remembered something. "You know, I used to be just like you. Energetic, eager, and maybe even a little proud." "You? Really?" "Oh, sure. It was a long time ago, when I was still a young engine. Back then, I was the strongest engine on my branch line. One day I was taking a train to the last station, which didn't have a turntable. I had to pull the next train backwards. It was slow going and I became impatient. I began to speed up." "What happened?" "I went over a switch too fast and my tender derailed. Nobody was hurt, but my passengers were very upset. But as it turns out, the rails had actually been heated and bent by the sun. Even though I was going too fast, the accident wasn't my fault. My point is, you can be careful and still have accidents. Everybody does once in a while." Sam took in Hubert's story. It did make him feel a little better. "Thank you, Hubert," he said. "Andrew's right. You are a good teacher. Glad I could help. And speaking of help, it looks like your tender's back on the rails. You'd better get on with this train." And Sam did. When the freight cars tried their tricks again, he bumped them back and kept them in order. He arrived safely and even made up for lost time. That night, the yardmaster visited Sam. "You've worked very hard and I'm proud of you. You've proven that you are a really useful engine." "Thank you, sir." "Starting tomorrow morning, you'll be back on express duties. Make sure you get a good night's sleep." "Oh, yes, sir," Sam said happily and quickly closed his eyes. But before he did, he looked over at Hubert. The old engine smiled and gave him a wink of congratulations. The next day, Sam coupled up to his coaches and charged down the line, happy as can be. He was right on time, and everywhere he went, everyone cheered for their favorite express engine.